Hi, welcome back to 10 Minute Traveller. In this video, we're going to look at some of the skills that I think are important if you want the game to run smoothly. Let's face it, the game is going to be in multiple places. It's going to be in the stars, it's going to be on spaceships, it's going to be in vacuum, it's going to be on planets. So there are plenty of skills that we should be thinking about. However, in Traveller, you can't have every skill. You'd be 101 years old just to even get close to having most of the skills. And when you get to around about that age, for most humans, it's really downhill from there. So what I would like to do is just run through some of the skills that I think are important for people to have when you're starting off, especially a team of people. Traveller works really well when you've only got maybe 4 or 5 people that have to work together, but it can work equally well with a much larger group as long as everybody is willing to understand that people have a place. Okay, so let's get started with the first skill. So the first skill is administration. The individual has had experience with bureaucratic agencies and understands the requirements dealing with them. Okay, so there's going to be times when you're going to be getting onto a space station, a starport, and the first thing that's going to happen is you have to go through customs. And if you're bringing in something, that small pistol that you've got tucked in your belt, or maybe that interesting powder that you've got from that previous planet that makes you feel just a little bit happier, then there's some bureaucracy to go through. So administration skill can help with that. Also, if you're dealing with large amounts of money, paying for a ship for example, administration can help there as well, helping to get the right people, the lawyers, the accountants, the brokers, the bureaucracy, if you will, all in place. It's not exciting, I grant you, but it is important, so one of the most undervalued skills in the game. The next skill is computer. It's science fiction after all, so computers are everywhere. However, in Traveller terms, looking at classic Traveller, most of the computers that we're talking about are industrial-like computers. That means that they rarely have interfaces that are voice interfaces or fancy holographic interfaces or mind-linked interfaces. They're big clunky keyboards, maybe the odd mouse, maybe the odd touchscreen, but ultimately they're computers that have to do a job. Now that can work with computers that are on the ground, and it can work with computers principally when they're on ships. And if you think that you can fly a starship without a computer, well, you may have to think again. Engineering is our next choice. Engineering. Something goes wrong on a ship, there's a good chance the engineer is going to have to go and try and fix it. Having only one engineer on a ship could be seen as a bit of a bad deal. Engineering lets you get into the engine room, of course, but it's also for all of those other systems as well. You need a good engineer. And if you don't have one, well, as soon as you get into trouble, you're going to be flying blind, you're going to be flying nowhere, and you're going to be stuck in the middle of space, which I'm led to believe is quite large. Our next skill is JOT, Jack of all trades. Now this is a book 1 skill, which for many years I think has caused some controversy. In terms of skills, you'll recall from one of my previous videos that it's possible to have a 0 level in a skill. Jack of all trades essentially, if you read it straight from the book, means that you have a 0 level in all of the skills that you don't have any other levels in, which makes it extremely powerful. That's not the way I run the game. However, maybe you do. If you're running the game, you want JOT to do it that way, that's great. But it makes JOT to be extremely powerful, overpowering, I believe. I think JOT works when you define it as those skills that you could relatively easily pick up through experience. Something like swimming or climbing or riding a bike. And I'm sure there's plenty of other examples as well. But you should define what it is when you start the game if characters do have JOT. All ships require a good navigator. The navigator skill helps you go from planet to planet, star to star, star to planet, star to gas giant, space station to space station. Somebody is going to need to have navigation if you want to go anywhere. You can use the computer, of course, but it's not always reliable, so a good navigation skill is important. Having a medical skill speaks for itself. Remember, in Traveller there is no magical healing, there is no super scientific healing in standard tech levels. If you go to tech levels 14 or 15, maybe there are magical healing capabilities, nanobots that rebuild bodies, that sort of thing. But ultimately in the field, if somebody shoots you and a bullet goes through you, there is nothing that you can just spray on that wound and it just suddenly comes back to normal. But medical skill is important to define if you've got problem and then speed up things once you do have the correct equipment around. Just like all good ships need a navigator, they also need a pilot, somebody who is able to steer that ship. A good pilot can get you in and out of a space dock, it can get you onto and off of a planet, they can get you to and from a system, they can go and refuel from a gas giant. They can avoid being shot, they can make shots on other spacecraft, and so on and so forth. You will need a pilot, somebody who is able to use a large ship, understand the controls, and make that ship do what they want. Traveller is set in space, and space is a vacuum. If you don't know how to get into a spacesuit, then things are going to get rough for you very quickly. So in this respect, learning VacSuit or vacuum suit is a good starting point. You need to have at least a level or two if you want to be extremely proficient if you're spacewalking. If you get 2 or 3, then you're extremely good, and you can do such things as various engineering and acrobatic maneuvers whilst out in space. Gun combat is next, and actually gun combat and melee combat and blade combat can all be broken down into the same type of ilk. What we've got there are various different weapons that you can use, and the more experience and skill that you have in them, the better you are to hit the target or strike the target, damage the target that you are trying to hit. That is broken down in various different pieces. For my game, I will make it clear about the designations that you can have. If you're running the game, however, then you should make it absolutely clear to the players what things are broken down into. In my game, it's broken down into advanced combat rifles, pistols, energy weapons, huge energy weapons like PGMPs, and auto weapons such as Gauss machine guns or Gauss rifles, that sort of stuff. Instruction is a great skill if you intend to play the game over a period of time. People need to learn and understand new skills, and instruction can aid with that. The way that I use instruction is that I use it to actually compress the amount of time it takes to teach people things. You can use it however you want to, adding as a bonus for learning or whatever it may be, but it's a good skill to have. The game is going to have players land on all different types of planets with all different types of atmospheres. You'll have desert planets, you'll have water planets, you'll have forests, you'll have Antarctic-like planets, whatever it may be. The survival skill helps people when they're out there, in case they crash there, for example, or are left there for whatever reason. In this respect, I just use one survival skill. You have a survival skill. Some people might like to break it down further into various different subcategories. I think that's pushing it too far, but do whichever one that you want, whatever makes you feel comfy. If you're intending to fight a lot of different battles in space, then ZeroG Combat is an essential, especially if the weapons that you have may not be the most cutting edge in terms of technological weapons. Energy weapons, for example, have very little to zero recoil, so when fighting in space they can be a tremendous advantage. However, if you don't have that luxury and all you have is a shotgun, for example, then being able to brace and shoot and not recoil off into the distance is very, very useful indeed. And the final skill is Broker. A little bit like administration, doesn't sound very exciting. If you are intending, as a group or as a player or as a GM that wants to actually allow this to go on a little bit more than normal, in terms of people trading goods from one system to another, then Broker can be very handy. It can get you the best goods at the best price and sell them as well. So if you want to make a profit, Broker's a good skill to get. Well, that's it for the skills. We're going to be looking in the next video at how we actually get those skills, and that means making characters. Okay, so join me in the next 10-minute Traveller, where we're going to be looking at characters, creating characters, and all that goes into it. Thanks very much for listening.